Welcome to Session Sunday. Hi guys, it's Jack Edwards, and today's session is going to be focusing around counter-attacking by attacking the space in behind. But before we get into this week's video, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe, and if you missed last week's video, click on the link above. Okay, so moving into the first part of this week's session, we're moving into a little bit of a pattern where we're just going to be focusing on counter-attacking, and then we'll be moving into two small-sided games. But before we get into it, let's have a look at how many players we're working with this week and the equipment that we're using. So in terms of players, okay, we're going to have 14 players in total. So 12 outfield players, 2 goalkeepers. If you don't have 2 goalkeepers in parts 2 and 3, that's fine. Okay, we can just add in small-sided goals or end zones for the team who isn't counter-attacking to score in. And then, but in this part now, you could try and have a spare coach if there's 2 of you doing the session, or even more, a volunteer who's helping out, or even a parent to ask to go in goal. Okay, just to make it realistic for the players. In terms of the equipment, okay, we're mainly going to be using balls, bibs and cones, and then we have poles, which we speak about quite a lot in terms of starting with these areas. That'd be great, but you don't need them too much this week, okay, but if you do have them, then that's fine. In terms of the setup for this part of the session, okay, so from the goal line, it's around about the middle player here. We're looking for around minimum about 20 yards each side. Okay, so then the centre-backs here can be about 10 yards away from the goalkeeper, okay, as if they're receiving the ball, or can even be a little bit more as well if you wanted to, with the striker on each side, position the same. Then the middle area, between 10 and 15 yards. So you're looking around 50 to 60 yards, again, depending on what age group you're working with. If you're working with a younger age group, it won't be as big, okay, but working with older players, and again, if you have more players as well, then you want to increase that size, okay, so we can attack more space. So, in terms of the width, okay, it's going to be 15 yards into the middle, 15 yards out there. And again, that can be increased, okay, so you're looking about between 30 and 40 yards. Because obviously you can have 30 yards in here, but you can have more on the outside, because we're trying to attack inside in here, so we're trying to attack central areas. So, each keeper will start with the ball, okay. They will play to either centre-back, okay, so we kind of want them to play to the same one. So, they can just alternate plays left centre-back once, then play to the right centre-back next. If you've got more players in this part of the session, you can just add them in to different areas. Okay, you can just add them into like an extra midfielder in here, you can add an extra wingers in here, and you can just alternate and take turns. When the centre-backs receives the ball, we're then looking for the 4 players further up the pitch, because we're looking to get 4 players in attack, okay, who are receiving the ball. So this is as if we've transitioned, okay, so we're transitioning to then go and attack. We're looking for their movement to receive the ball. So this player might drop in short. This player also might drop in short. This player might come off the line. The striker might drop in to receive the ball as well. Centre back, we'll really have 3 or 4 options to play. As soon as they play in, okay, we're looking to attack the goal. So if they play into the central player, look to drive into space. Can we get support from out wide? And then once this centre back here has played their pass, so they might play into this green player here, then they're looking to, okay, how can we defend? So they're looking to protect the centre of the pitch, protect the goal. So that's what we need our width for. Okay, we get our depth with our striker in here. Okay, so then what we're looking for is attack that quickly. Okay, so attack at speed, play the ball quickly, dribble it quickly, so make our decisions quickly. So what we are focusing on is, can we attack vertically first, not out wide, because we're trying to attack that space. It becomes a lot more easier, especially if they've got recovering defenders to defend once the ball goes into wide areas, where it's more difficult centrally, because that's where the goal is. Okay, so the Greens will be doing the exact same thing at the same time as the Blues are attacking here. The ball might got played into the right winger, so again, we're coming off different angles. So where can our support runs be then? You might have, he travels inside, the striker might take a run in behind, might take a player out wide, you might have the centre midfielder going on the overlap with the extra wide player providing width. So then, because it's a 4v2 scenario, we are going to get an option spare if we play, obviously, our cards right, so we make the right runs, ball gets played in, can we look to finish quickly? And as soon as the drill's finished, we go back to the start, okay, players return to their start points, and we go again, but then we want to go from the opposite side. So this centre-back and receiver open out, want them to play 2-touch, and then they might play bang, play across the pitch. Okay, this player drives inside, striker might pull out. Okay, you might get the winger coming in here, centre midfielder on the overlap, so support runs again, and then we might get a run, cut in behind for the striker to winger to receiver, gets played in. And so decision making, okay, the awareness of the players' runs, that's them support runs are vital, okay, to making sure that it's not even movement to receive the ball, it's creating space for your teammates as well. We will now move into our first animation before moving on to part 2 of this week's session. Now moving into part 2 of this week's session, we're now focusing on trying to win the ball in midfield third to attack the space and behind. So now we've adjusted it, okay, for having more players. But if you have less players, so again, if you have 12 outfield players, it can just be a 6v6 scenario, or if you wanted to, you could have a 7 versus 5 scenario. But right now we're going 8v8. So we're just eliminating from the blues the fullbacks, and from the greens, wingers or fullbacks are going to have players in wide areas. In terms of the setup, okay, in terms of the depth, so these 2 areas here, so the final third can either be 15 or 20 yards. Midfield third here we're looking to be 20 yards, and then the final third a little bit bigger at 25. So you're looking around about 60 yards a depth. Again, if you've got less players, you can decrease that. If you've also got a younger age group, you can decrease that too. So the ball will start with the coach. He will play into any of the players in here. So then in terms of the width, it's going to be 10 yards either side with 30 yards central. The wide players for the greens, in possession, have to stay in the wide area. So they can come into the final third, they come to this area here, but they have to stay in the wide areas, because that then gives us on transition a chance to attack, okay, in behind with the centre-backs as well. So the centre-backs are staying there with the striker occupying them, and in this middle third here, the wingers can come in to force the overload, okay, and prevent the wide players getting it, and then the centre-backs and the striker obviously just push up with the play. So the coach will play into one of the greens, they're looking to manoeuvre the ball, so again it's difficult for them to get out of pressure, they're looking to move the ball and score, so they might play in, play out, they might get the ball in, they might be able to work the ball okay, and then as the ball comes into an area we can win it, we're looking to pinch. The first thought is, can we go forward? So we can't pass, we dribble, but the first thought should be, can we pass? So where's an option out of pressure? We're trying to play out of pressure, so can we play to the striker? Okay, support runs from wide areas, you want to get 4 players in attack. Who's the nearest midfielder who can attack in here as well? So then the defenders, they're going to have the fullbacks recovering, but because of how far away they are, it's going to be difficult, okay? So they might have their midfielders recovering. So as this striker receives it here, centre-backs obviously looking to protect the goal, protect the centre of the pitch. So the wingers provide that width, make it difficult. Can we get a support run as well? Maybe on the opposite side to where the striker's dribbling with the ball, and eventually, as we get close towards goal, we're looking for that final product. So can it be a shot? Can it be a pass for the player to move in and then finish? So the coach can always start with the ball, or you can even start with the goalkeeper of the greens if you wanted to as well. So we'll go back from here again. So we've got the midfield 3, we've got that front 3. Okay, so in here it might look a little bit tight at the moment because of the way it's set up, but once it's actually on the pitch, it will be fine. So again, it might get played into the wide place. We've got to shuffle across, okay, might get played in, play back, and as the ball maybe switches across and gets set in the middle, the winger might even pinch the ball. For them, can they secure it? So if they've got their back towards goal, it might just be a fact of play that ball to somebody else, okay, who can then provide a forward option. So then can we get our support again? We might get a winger making a run inside, gets played straight through the middle of the pitch, and then we can score. So the focus on this is winning it in the middle of the pitch. So obviously the green team who's going to start with the ball, for them, it's obviously they're going to be stepped up, but there's not too much space in behind, whereas the next drill is going to be played against like a higher line, okay, so which means there is going to be more space in behind, but our support runs are going to be coming from deeper. We will now move into our next animation before moving on to the final part of this week's session. Okay, so moving into the final part of this week's session, we're now moving into a small side game which is focusing on counter-attacking in terms of like the defensive third now. So in terms of the depth and the width for this one, okay, in this area here, so we're going to have like the 18-yard box, okay, but you don't have to make it as wide, okay, just try and do the obviously 18 yards of depth, and then you can decide how far wide you want to go. So it could be like 5 yards either side of the goal if you want to do, or 10 yards. In terms of the depth, so we kind of want between 20 and 25 yards once we get past this point. 5-10 yards in the middle of here, okay, for the centre-backs. And then we're looking for about between 30 and 40 yards of depth. So again, probably between 60 and 70 yards. But that's depending if you've got 16 players. If you've got less players, that's fine. It can be less. It could just be like 30 yards total in here and 20 yards further there. So 50 yards in general. In terms of the width, you're going to be looking for around about 50 yards. So it could be 20 in here and then 50 in either side. So what we're trying to do is tell the team, the Blues, don't drop into this box, okay, until the ball goes into these areas, because we're not playing with fullbacks. So what we're trying to do is win the ball and then attack that space in behind, okay? So we're defending a little bit deeper, okay? But then we've got that space to attack behind quickly. So again, this team's going to be playing without fullbacks or wingers. This team's going to be playing without fullbacks. So the coach or playing to the greens can either be the centre-backs or centre-mids. We're going to leave the centre-backs. All we're going to have with the striker is just screening passes away. So they might play in, they might be playing the ball in the middle as well. And then as the opportunity arises where we can get them into congested areas, okay, so the player might even dribble the ball into here, and then we can try and cut out their options, okay, so then the ball might get them played in, then we can go and attack. What we've got space in these wide areas, we've got space in behind. So again, get the front three attacking, you might have a front four, and then the player on the ball, okay, if they can dribble into space, perfect. If they can pass, even better. And then where can our support runs be? But what we also have to think about is protecting ourselves against the counter as well, because if we try to play the ball through and it gets intercepted and we've already got 5 players up the pitch, then there might be an overload. Whereas if we have 4 in attack and 4 ready to defend, okay, then we can protect ourselves against the counter, okay, so if the opposition wins the ball back somehow. So we get the ball in these areas, so we're getting our width, okay? We've got to think about the offside line here as well, though. So can we play the ball quickly so we can go into space? So if we drive too much and they maintain a high line, it's going to be difficult. But as the opposition drops, that's when we can look to attack the space, okay? You might get strikers making runs in behind, might make wingers getting runs across, striker pulls out, with our support, with our force. So as they start to get players back, they might get one full-back and midfielder whilst others are recovering, okay? We can still use that because they're not in a position to defend. So we're trying to get it in, we're trying to score before the opposition can retain their shape. So we can play into that final third. Once we get in that final third, round out to the goal mouth, that's when we look to penetrate and score. Once the ball is dead, so if the Greens win it back and score, okay, then the ball's obviously dead again. The ball will start with the coach. So we're getting our shape back in here again. 2 centre-backs, midfielders. Obviously you can set up with what formation you do in a game. We're going with like as if we're having a 4-3-3 concept. Ball can get played in. Once that ball comes into these areas in here, okay, we can overload, okay? Can we get players ready in position to press that ball, to swarm the ball? So then if we win it, sometimes it can even be we win the ball, and it's one pass in behind and the striker can go through. We still get our move up the pitch, okay? So we don't want a massive gap in between the final third and the defensive third, and we can go in and score. So that first thought after winning the ball has to be positive to go forward. So we're not trying to, we're trying to get the ball out of pressure basically, so get it into an area where we can attack. We will now move into our final animation before concluding this week's session. Thanks for watching this week's video. Don't forget to head over to our website where you can sign up to view all of our exclusive content. And we'll see you next week for another Session Sunday.